Pelonians, Cretans and Palestinians. We have partially covered the Pelons in the previous chapters, but the importance of the historical role what the Serbian tribes had under this name leads us to pay more attention to them and shed light on some other important moments in Serbian history. In Izorod it is said that of the sons of Egypt, among whom are the Judeans, are those who were in Egypt, and Murini, descended Philistines and Caphtorim. The Philistines are Palestinians or Palestians or Pelonians, and the Pelasgians, and the Caphtorim are their Cretan brothers. Wells says, the ancient Cretans were one race with the Iberians in Spain and Western Europe, Asia Minor and Northern Africa. They lived not only in Crete, but also in Cyprus, in Greece, before Greeks, in Sicily and in southern Italy. With this attitude of Wells, the Cretans occupy a prominent place among the Serbian tribes. The Philistines renamed Pelon, after which Palestine got its name. The Jews considered the Philistines to be Cretans. We have already transmitted Herodotus' statements that the whole of Crete was inhabited by Pelasgians. Therefore, the Philistines are Pelasgians. There are several names for the same people, in fact one name that is written and pronounced in several ways. Pelasgians, Pelastians, Pelonians, Pulesatians, Puni, Peoni, Panoni, and Phoeniki. The name Peloni should be considered the most correct. The name Pelonia came from the name of deity later known as Apollo. The original form of this name was Pelon, to which a prefix was added, the word as, and the word eri passed into oyu. So from Pelon it became Apollo. This god is a representative of the sun, and the Greeks took it over from the Serbs and celebrated it with great devotion. They did not forget his origin. For them he was God who came from the north, and this was proven and emphasized in his rites. Some said that Apollo was originally from Lycae in Asia Minor, that his mother was the goddess Leto, which was also Allada, and Latina in Italy. Others said that Apollo was the son of god Hammon, and that he was born in Africa, probably because Hammon was famous sun deity. But the traces of his name in one part of the Serbian tribes lead us to the Helm Peninsula as the original land of Apollo. Apollo was on a large part in Troy, and Homer classifies him among the deities on the side of the Dardanians in the Trojan War. In Greece, the Hyperboreans were considered the people of Apollo. Apollo's people, together with their god, arrive at the great Mediterranean Sea and call it by its name Pelag. Melanchthon says, Pelag is the center of the world. All the coasts and all the islands of this sea were once owned by the tribes of Serbian race, and, with few exceptions, remained in their possession for a very long time. Peloni, Rasi, Geti are just the names of Serbian names. Some writers still include Dardani, Trivali, and Krobici in Pelonians. The name Pelasgians and Peonis are identified with many writers, including Herodotus. He says about the city of Creston that it was built by the Pelasgians, and he counts the Crestons among the Peonis. Beneath Creston was a tribe of Mygdon, who are explicitly said to be Peons, but are also referred to as the Pelasgians or Tyrsenians. Droysen says that the Macedonians belong to the Pelasgian tribes, which were once spread all over Hellenic country and which the Hellenes consider barbarians or semi-barbarians. August Yard said that Thessalians that they are only half Greek-sized Pelasgians. Mayani says that the Pelasgians are Proto-Illyrian group, archaic and close to Rassens in Italy. Larissa is Mart. Rassen's personal name is Laris. Larissa of Thessaly ancestor was called Teutan. The name Teuta is purely Illyrian name and a Rassen personal name that is often found among them. Pelasgians are mentioned all over later Greece. According to Pliny, Arcadia was called Pelasgia. We find the identification of the Pelasgians with Mesim in Apollonius of Rhodos and in his Argonautica when he speaks of the Dolon Peninsula, today Gallipoli. Dolon was inhabited by the Pelasgians from Thessaly. In the time of the Argonauts, a certain Kizik, son of Enea and Eneta, daughter of Evzor, is mentioned as the leader of Dolons. This Evzor is mentioned as the king of Mesa, and his son Akama led the detachment of Mesa in Trojan War. Robert Latham says that the Pelasgian and Greek languages stand in relation to each other as Greek and Latin. Pelasgian language belongs to the same language category as well as Thracian and perhaps Slavic. Among the islands on Pelag, the most important place in history belongs to Crete, whose role as naval power and cultural incarnate is admirable. We mentioned earlier that Crete served as a meeting place and camp for Serbon's land and naval power, and that is set out from this island to conquer the west. Crete played the important role during the first Ninos campaign. Gustav Glotz speaks about Crete as a naval power and says that the island appeared very early in that role, already in a period between 2000 and 1750 BC. Diodorus says that Crete used to be called Idea, and that Crete was named after Hammon's wife, Creta, since he lived on this island. In Crete, one mountain was called Ida, and it was considered the seat of the gods. Crete is very early appears as a trading power, thanks primarily to geographical location. Child says that immediately after 2000 BC, merchants from eastern Pelag developed maritime trade in the western part of Pelag. In order to develop trade, Cretans built large and heavy cargo ships up to 30 meters long with rounded bows which could sail to all shores of Pelag. Crete and Troy had developed trade with Egypt, the Mittans, the Hattusians, the Assyrians, and the Kassites of Vardun. Trade caravans went from the shores of Pelag to far inland in Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Cretans first established warehouses on the shores of Pelag, and then permanent warehouses, some of which were converted into Cretan settlements. Such Cretan warehouses have been found in Euboea, Aegina, Delos, Amorg, Paros, Sifnos, Thebes, Laconia, Argolida, Corfu, and Sicela. Corinth and Marathon are Cretan buildings. Around 1750 BC, Crete establishes its supremacy at sea, the first known in history thalassocracy. After the expulsion of the Hyksos, Egypt emerges as new power and expands its dominance in Syria. Since that time, the Egyptians have widely used services of the Cretan navy, both in trade and in military purpose, and therefore one port was arranged on the site of the future port of Alexandria. The peak of Cretan power and thalassocracy was between 1750 and 1450 BC. In the 16th and 15th centuries BC, the Cretan warships were long, covered with deck, with 2 to 3 masts, with 2 rudders and 50 oarsmen. Some of them had 2 towers, one at the bow and other at the stern. They had strong and sharp rosters on the bow. These ships were used mainly to chase pirates and various harems to secure trade sea routes. The Cretan restricted the right of navigation to coastal towns and tribes which were engaged in piracy. Plutarch says that Greeks were forbidden to sail on the open sea with a crew of more than 5 people. Pirate cities and violators of certain rights were punished. Among the punished cities, the first place was taken by Athens, which had to deliver a certain number of young men and women for slavery to Cretans every year. The Cretan rulers, who by their ruling structure resembled prefects rather than kings, were mostly called Mino. This reminds us a lot of Phrygian rulers of Mitanns. One Mino besieged Megara, and on that occasion the ruler of Megara, named Scylla, died or was killed. Herodotus says that the Cretans besieged the place Kamnik on Sicela for 5 years.